Hello, YouTube. I am Vince White. I am an employment attorney. We answer publicly posted questions from YouTube users, getting folks the answers they need from an employment attorney on this channel. We have a question from YouTube user Blue Line Abolitionist. Also, somebody was saying something that I read a name that meant something not nice. I don't know what the names mean. I don't think about the names. I mean, listen, is somebody gonna like someday slip like a hateful or nasty name by me? Yeah, they are. I'm not like sitting here with the AI. I don't have Chat GPT reading all the names telling me, oh, that one's problematic. There's an endless number of hateful and awful or even comical things people might say, and I'm not going to catch them all. I'm not even going to try. Sorry, it's not something I'm going to think about. There's always going to be trolls. Okay, so Blue Light Abolitionist. I'm not saying your name is nasty. Not saying that. I don't know what you're specifically referring to with your name. Hey, Vince, I have a scenario and questions for you. I have answers for you. Employee requests an accommodation. The employee asks to use a piece of furniture that already exists and that is not being used by anyone. I assume you paid for your accommodation. You got a letter from your doctor. You did everything like best practices. I'm just presuming that that's what went on here. But I digress. Let's go back to the question. Employee's work shift overlaps the previous shift by 1.5 hours, and the employee is now having to wait for the previous shift to be done in order to use the accommodation piece of furniture. Okay, not ideal. Often the accommodation is missing or hidden. Finally, one day the accommodation is broken and thrown in the garbage, most likely by the department supervisor. What kind of violations would these be? Are they potentially criminal? Criminal? No, they're not criminal. The above is pretty well documented in emails, photos, and with witnesses. Thanks in advance. Okay, so this is generally, as I understand it, going to be a civil claim unless like, when you ask if it's criminal, if this exposed you to like risk of personal harm or something like that, or if you like paid for the piece of furniture and they destroyed it, like there's ways it could be criminal, I guess, but like generally speaking, no, this is civil. So under the federal laws, and check with local counsel for your state and local laws, but under the federal laws, it sounds like you're utilizing the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act here. And under the ADA, you're due a reasonable accommodation if you have a disability. And best practice would be to get a reasonable accommodation letter from your doctor, and somebody's immediately going to post, you don't have to do that. Okay, I'm not going to respond to your comment. Best practice, the best way to do this is to get a letter from your doctor saying what you need as an accommodation. Then to engage in the reasonable accommodation dialogue with your employer, and then obtain the reasonable accommodation you need. Here, it sounds like you were extraordinarily reasonable, right? You said, hey, that piece of furniture works for me. It meets with my accommodation, and you already own it in Blair. And then things started off okay, and they got kind of nasty because other people wanted to use it, and you weren't getting your accommodation. At which point I would say, it's time to get you a specific accommodation that's like protected. Like, okay, so other people are using it. I need my own, and it needs to be protected so I can use it, because that's part of the reasonable accommodation. It makes sense that if you need a special chair, and other people are stealing your chair or whatever it is, I assume it's a chair. I have no idea, but it could be a standing desk for all I know, right? It's, I think, still reasonable in most situations, most employers to say, hey, I need this piece of furniture for my reasonable accommodation, and like people are taking it, so I need you to protect it and like put it somewhere that I can actually get it every day when I come to work, and I need to get it at the start of my shift, not an hour and a half in, because, you know, my disability is being impaired by not having this reasonable accommodation. Now, when you say the accommodation is broken and thrown in the garbage, and probably by the department supervisor, I guess you would need some evidence of that, because it's very different if the department supervisor is like angrily breaking your accommodation. That certainly exacerbates the claim and makes the claim potentially more egregious and more valuable. I suspect, knowing nothing about you or nothing about this, that it might just be like a chair got broken. Shit happens in the workplace, and like the solution here is that you get your own reasonable accommodation chair. And if it's your supervisor and they're doing it maliciously to mess with you, that it's time to talk to an employment attorney. But realistically speaking, if it's just something that happened, the solution is you get another chair. You get your chair, and every time the chair is destroyed in the future, they get you a new chair. That's the reasonable accommodation doesn't like guarantee that like something won't happen to your special chair because things happen, right? The reasonable accommodation is that they make sure you have a chair no matter what happens to your chair. So listen, and people are doing it on purpose. That's a different thing. That's, as I said, time to speak to an employment attorney. But if it's just like something that happened, that's the world. Things happen. Above is pretty well documented in emails, photos, and with witnesses. That's great. Yeah. I mean, listen, especially if this is something being done on purpose, then you should speak to an employment attorney. If this is something where they won't get you a new reasonable accommodation chair or whatever it is, whatever the piece of furniture is, then that is also, at that point, time to talk to an employment attorney, I would say. Certainly, it sounds like you may have a claim here, and I'm sorry you're being put through this, but I hope it can be remedied for you, and I hope that everything works out, and that you can comfortably, be accommodated in your line of work with your disability and move on and be happy, successful, and rule the world. If this was helpful, like, subscribe, comment down below. It helps me to help more people just like you. And remember, almost everybody works. Not everybody wins. Be smart out there.